I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. We had permission. I don't know, man.
Well, that was just a few moments ago. Joe Biden's first public remarks, and several women have come forward with allegations of inappropriate conduct. Katie Pavlich is an editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sandra. Good to see you.
Were you surprised to hear how he came out of the gate there on the stage? He referenced Lonnie Stevenson, which is the president of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and said, quote, "I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie." We're still monitoring his words there, but he hasn't directly addressed the accusations against him yet, Katie.
Well, first of all, Lonnie is a man, so I'm not sure how the women who have brought forth very serious statements about how Joe Biden made them feel when he inappropriately touched them will feel about him joking during his first public appearance on this, especially after he refused to issue an apology. But Joe Biden, immediately after he made that joke, launched into what this presidential election is going to be all about. Democrats say they want to beat Donald Trump. Joe Biden immediately talked about small towns, hard blue-collar work. He immediately talked about Scranton, Pennsylvania, and he actually talked about how, in general, people have become elitists and forgotten about those people who are working very hard in those small towns and how those jobs have left. So he's talking to a union audience, one that has actually been supportive in some ways around the country of President Trump. And the battle for Joe Biden, if he can get through a primary, is going to be taking back some of those votes that are Democrats in terms of registration who voted for President Trump in 2016 in places like Ohio, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
The latest accuser to come forward on Joe Biden published an op-ed in the Washington Post. In that, his accuser said, "A photo of me and Joe Biden went viral. I want him to take ownership for his actions." It's not just the accusers, and it is some within his own party. Elizabeth Warren even saying that he owes answers to all these accusations. She said that Saturday. It was prior to him putting out that video tweet, Katie. The video tweet came out. He addressed the accusations, but he did not directly apologize. Would that change things?
I'm not sure that it would. There's not a lot of forgiveness when it comes to making these apologies, as we've seen politically. Al Franken resigned over allegations that he inappropriately touched women during campaign stops or photo shoots, or not photo shoots, but taking photos in a photo line with people who would come to see him. And it seems like he's had some regret over that. And Democrats who are running for president, like Kirsten Gillibrand, have struggled with the question about whether he should have resigned. So Democrats are struggling with this issue of how much inappropriate behavior is going to be allowed in the Me Too movement. Is an apology enough? Is an explanation of what happened enough? Are people like Donna Brazile, for example, coming out and saying, "I know Joe Biden, he's never been inappropriate with me"? Is that vouching for character going to be enough to keep him in the race should he decide to get in? But I think more broadly, this is going to be an issue of the economy, of policies, and there's a long record that Joe Biden has that's been somewhat forgotten about as a senator that will certainly come back up for scrutiny. But this woman who wrote this op-ed that you brought up, I found it very interesting because she said, look, because Joe Biden has done so much work on the issue of violence against women and sexual assault, he should know better than to behave in the way that he did, whereas that's been used as a defense for him in many ways, saying, look, he's worked on the Violence Against Women Act, he's worked to champion women. Well, she's saying, yeah, that's exactly the point. Because he's done all of that, he has no excuse.
Here's exactly what she's saying in that op-ed. She says, quote, "He has done important work to address sexual violence over the years. I didn't want to discredit it then. I don't want to discredit it now. But it's precisely because he has been active on this for so long that he should have realized much earlier that he could be making women uncomfortable, and that given his powerful position, women could be holding back from expressing those feelings."
Right. So she's basically saying he should know better based on the number of women he's met with, listening to their stories, listening to their experiences, and yet he continued the behavior until now when he's allegedly about to run for president. And he said in this video earlier this week, sure, I'm happy to give people their personal space, but then he goes to this public event today and makes a joke about it when there are very serious allegations from women who have survived sexual assault when it comes to how they feel about about what Joe Biden did to them. Now, Democratic voters, as many Democratic candidates have said, are going to be the ones who are going to decide that. But when it comes to a general election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I think, will be talking about other issues besides inappropriate behavior like this.
We asked Lara Trump to directly address this earlier on this program, and she had this to say, Katie.
If I were already in the race for the 2020 Democrat nomination, I probably would not like to run against Joe Biden. So who knows why this came up now?
And she was questioning the timing of it all. And here's continued live pictures of Joe Biden on the stage there. We are monitoring it. He hasn't directly addressed this yet, Katie. But
I don't think he will.
You don't think he will?
I don't think he's going to. No, I don't think he's going to be bringing this up. I think he's in front of an audience that he feels has a message that he wants to resonate when it comes to campaigning, if that's something that he decides to do. And this is an issue that he certainly doesn't want to continue to push into the public sphere. But, you know, on the issue of this coming out now and being new, this type of behavior from Joe Biden has been known for years. We've been looking at the video and seeing it for years. And some people in the media have pointed it out, many have not. So it's not necessarily a new allegation. It's just being pushed by somebody who is trying to beat Joe Biden back into the public sphere as a way to weaponize an issue against him in a very, very crowded Democratic field where people are having trouble defining themselves as they get started for that debate that's happening in June.
All right. Well, these live pictures will continue, and we'll continue to monitor that for everybody. But Katie, thank you. Appreciate having you here today.
All right, Biden finally speaking out today. Not a direct apology, but he is promising to be more mindful about personal space while still hinting at a 2020 presidential run. Joining me now, DJ Hill, a writer who decided to go public, recalling her own uncomfortable meeting with Biden in 2012. DJ, welcome to the show. You've talked a little bit about your situation. It was a political fundraiser. He had his arm around you. You were uncomfortable as it slipped down your back. Your husband stepped in and sort of broke it up with a joke. Why did you decide to tell your story?
I think we're going through a cultural shift in our country, which in my opinion is long overdue. And I've been inspired by women who have been brave enough to say that actions negatively impacted them, that they felt uncomfortable. And I also am a parent and a grandparent, and I think this issue is weary, and we've talked about it for decades. It's polluted politics, it's polluted our culture, and I think we've come to a point where we need to have a zero tolerance policy so that our country can focus on pressing issues at hand.
I want to play a little bit more of the president's, the vice president's statement today. It was very lengthy. Here's a little bit more about what he said about how times have changed.
Social norms have begun to change, they've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I get it.
But DJ, in that couple minutes long Twitter announcement there, he never used the words, "I'm sorry." That bothered some of the other women who have come forward. What's your response?
I would like to think that perhaps this is a time of realization and self-awareness for Mr. Biden. You know, time will tell, but I think that no one should define another person's boundaries, period. And so I will be waiting to see from Mr. Biden as well as other candidates. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to show actions that you're moving toward what you say this self-realization is about.
I want to read something from a Washington Post opinion piece about this whole thing. They said, claiming that the women who have said Biden made them feel uncomfortable are either lying to boost other candidates or that their stories ought to be discounted based on how long it took them to come out would seem to set a chilling standard for a political movement that is aimed to put women's experiences at the center of its advocacy. You heard Lucy Flores talk about what she's faced. People have called her a liar, a racist. They question her motives. They try to minimize her experience. Have you faced any of that since you went public?
What I would say about that is I never realized this was a very difficult decision for me. I had not planned to do this when I went to that fundraiser. That was the last thing that I anticipated happening. And I really appreciate what moral courage it takes for women to come forward. And I think anyone questioning them doesn't realize, for instance, I have not slept in 24 hours. My phone went off all night. I received some not so encouraging correspondence, and I think anyone that calls into question these women's behavior doesn't understand that there is no upside for them. And so we do it because we're patriots and we believe in our country, but we also want to see a cultural change.
I used to be a sex harassment attorney in another life. Do you worry that some of these reactions and what you've described happening to you will make women think twice about sharing their own story or experience?
I think if you're honest, I think I've been very specific about, I've listened to the commentary, I've been very specific about how I described Mr. Biden's behavior, that it made me uncomfortable. I've been in some cases urged to call it, a sexual, was it this, was it that? It made me uncomfortable. And so I think what I would say to other women is if you have this story to tell, you have to examine in your own heart how important it is for you to come forward. But I would also urge you that it is something that I think is respected. People respect other people that come forward and share a story, but they share it honestly, and they're doing it for the purposes of wanting to do their civic duty.
DJ Hill, we thank you for coming on to talk about it with us. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.